You're not getting all the answers you want in the final season of Game of Thrones, and D&D think that is brilliant. So of late, of course, we're getting tons of interviews with actors and with showrunners and all that. That's to be expected. It's the final season, they're gonna hype the hell out of it, and with each interview, I've been getting more and more excited. But then there's interviews where I realize those dicks are going to blue ball us with the final season. First, and my biggest reason for this concern, is when the showrunners were asked about their favorite endings to popular shows, they responded, "Breaking Bad stuck the landing. We always talk about The Sopranos ending. As controversial as it may have been at the time, it's hard to imagine a better ending for that show. Or any show." The fact that they think Sopranos has a good ending really worries me. Do not give us this ambiguous shit. I need closure. Now I imagine the Night King dead, the Lannister siblings dead, Dany dead, and Jon just standing there, looking out at Westeros, realizing he has a lot of work to do to heal the realm and get order back to the land. Cut to black. That's right. We don't know if Jon ever takes the throne or what is left of the throne. Who rules the North, Westerlands, Dorne, and so on. All we know is the others were defeated, lots of people are dead, and now we need to imagine how they rebuild their world. But you may be thinking, Rorist, you dumb dizzy bitch. This isn't confirmation they're going to leave a bunch of loose ends. You're overreading this. There's other interviews. There are other interviews that prove they are blue-balling us. Like Jorah's actor Ian, who shared with us that they are definitely leaving questions at the end of the season, saying, "When I read the scripts, I felt, they've done it. They've pulled it off. That balance of satisfying people's desire for things to be complete, but leaving enough questions in the air for people to try to project forward what world will follow. Individually for all the characters and universally for the world that Thrones has occupied." Okay, so maybe we end seeing the divided kingdom, and we have to imagine what they'll do to stitch the Seven Kingdoms back together again. That's not a terrible cliffhanger. However, then there's an actor who makes it sound like we're going to want a hell of a lot more after the ending of this season. So Gwendolyn shared in an interview, "There's something about this story that's compulsive and essential. What showrunners David Benioff and Dan Weiss have done in terms of this being the final season is masterful. I don't think there's any way people aren't going to want more." I like that she thinks viewers wanting more is actually a good thing. No, I want to be satisfied with the ending, and not satisfied like, oh, my favorite character lives, satisfied as in we adequately wrap this story up. If you think The Sopranos is a good ending, that's great. I did not, and that terrifies me that they think it is. What does give me hope is Bran's actor Isaac talking to GQ. With something as massive and as divisive as Game of Thrones, there's no way they'll manage to please everyone. There are going to be people who are annoyed. As far as I'm concerned, and everyone else I've spoken to who knows the conclusion, I think we've wrapped it up in a really clever way. We've wrapped it up in the most Game of Thrones way possible. We haven't been outlandish or come up with some strange cliffhanger just for the sake of it, just to throw people off the trail. But at the same time, we haven't done everything that everyone wants. We're keeping some surprises up our sleeves. So he didn't say there wasn't a cliffhanger, but he did say what happens isn't totally out there and it's actually in line for Game of Thrones. So maybe tons of people die and we just have a few left to pick up the pieces? But there's more hope thanks to Isaac from this GQ interview. He also said, all the episodes are longer, more or less. Well, not the first two. Obviously there are some big battles. Episode 3 is going to be something else. There are definitely things wrapping up from many seasons ago where you're like, oh, I never thought that would come back. Okay, so it sounds like we'll get closure for some things, and maybe some things from seasons ago, but not all the answers. I mean, did anyone think there was gonna be closure between Bran and Jaime at one point? So that could be what he's talking about. So we're just going to get some answers and not them all? But maybe not, because Arya's actress Maisie had her own input on the ending, saying, I feel very satisfied with the ending of the entire show. Every story arc came to a really good close. This makes me think while we may not get every answer that we want, we'll get a good amount of answers to satisfy us to a certain degree. I mean, any type of closure at this point is closure, right? And the ending we get may not be completely terrible. Nikolai shared? The producers did an amazing job. It's so tricky because the world is so vast. There are so many storylines. They found the balance between the beginning and the ending. There's very few happy endings in that world. They did a great job in not being complete downers about it, but also being true to that world. Okay, so we're having an ending that will leave us with questions and wanting more, but it's not a complete downer. Got it. Okay, so what loose ends do you think D&D are going to leave for us to puzzle about for years to come? I'm kind of disappointed that I think this means we're not going to get a flash forward epilogue where we see where everyone's at. It's just gonna kind of end. So like, subscribe, and let me know, do you want a bunch of questions at the end of this season? Do you like the idea of us not getting complete closure, or do you want everything answered? Or do you think we'll get most things answered, but there'll be one or two things that we'll never figure out?